everybody, I'm Tom Vasel.
I'm Chris Yee.
I'm Roy Cannaday.
I'm Mike Dilisio.
Today we're taking a look at Twilight Inscription, which, there's two things. One, we called this game years ago.
I called it Roll and Write Imperium.
As a joke.
Yes.
As a joke.
I think they called it as a joke as well. So.
No, I mean, like years ago, we were like, well, Roll and Write, Twilight Imperium. That was always the thing, right?
Right.
When they announced it, we were like, really? And, of course, you're still annoyed they didn't call it Twilight Inscription.
No, Roll and Write Imperium.
It should have been called Mark It All Rex. That's what it should have been called.
Mark it hard. Anyhow, I'll be honest. I'm just telling you right now, there's two things I want to talk about. Where I am with Twilight Imperium. I love the game. I think it's fantastic, but I barely play it because it's so long.
Right.
I went into this game with extreme doubt because of the whole, you're taking one genre and putting it in another. That's just where I'm coming from going in. What about you guys?
Same. Yeah, trepidation, doubt, unsurety.
I love Twilight Imperium, and when I first saw this, I was like, April 1st? Oh, no, not April 1st. Oh, wow. So.
Yeah, I've only played Twilight Inscription once. It was on a live play on our channel.
Imperium.
Yes, Twilight Imperium once. Played this many more than once. Yeah, so I don't have a huge background on it. I also thought this might be kind of like one of their little, like they did with the Arkham Horror, the Barkham Horror that actually turned into a real thing. So yeah, I was a little trepidatious.
There's no way, there's a lot of rules in this game for sure. It's definitely a heavier one. I can't go over everything, but here's some idea of how it plays. Each player is going to get 4 boards put together. Now, there are 2 different sides to each board. There's a B side, which is all the same, and the A sides, which are asymmetrical, which, oddly enough, is just a weird thing. Normally, I would think that the A side would be the same, but that doesn't matter. Everyone's going to play with A's or B's. Each player is going to further differentiate themselves by drawing a couple of aliens, and you're going to pick one of them to use. Each alien has a special power that is always in play, and then they have another special power that will be activated depending on what players do over the course of the game, with lots of flavored text on the back. This is the one board that's in the middle of everybody, and mostly you're looking at this deck of cards. These are special goals that players can do. The first person to do it will take this many points and flip it over. Everybody else will get that many points. Each of these goals, which are randomly picked, correspond to one of the 4 boards. These are cool artifacts that you can get from exploring. But this here, you stack these in order from 1 to 5. So for each of the ages, you're going to turn over a card. Fledgling Empire, this says. And most of the cards are going to look like this. You're going to pick one of the 4 sheets. Each player is going to pick one of the 4 sheets. They're going to mark these symbols off on that sheet. After that's done, the speaker, one person, is going to roll these dice. The symbols that are rolled on the black dice, here they're all the same, but they could be anything. There are 3 different symbols in the game. Material, influence, and research. Everyone can use those on the same board that they put these symbols on. These colored dice are able to be used by players, but they have to unlock things on each board to be able to use these symbols. So you always have 3 plus whatever's on the card with the possibility of 3 more. I'm going to go over these kind of quickly, but just to give you an idea of how each board works. The navigation board here, you can spend material or a resource to explore. You already have a starting home planet with some lines, and exploring is just extending those lines on the board. You can use influence then to take over a planet, to claim an explored system. Once you're to it, you can explore it. Some of them are going to give you commodities. Some will give you victory points at the end of the game. Some will give you planets that you can deal with. There's all different things. In fact, you can see that some of them, like, where is it on this board? Over here, if I circle this, you get to use your special ability on your card. There's also wormholes that you might be able to jump around. But this brings into play something I want to talk about that's going to be on all the boards. So on each board, there are 2 different technologies. You can spend research. Let's say I got 2 research. I could spend it there. Once I get the 3rd research, I now can use this technology. But also, there are specialty tokens that you can get. And if you get these specialty symbols, if I, for example, got 1 yellow specialty symbol on another board, I can mark it off here. And that's something else I need to make clear, that when you get things, there's a little dotted line around each one. So if you get a dotted line, you immediately get that. This is a commodity and will be marked off on the industry board. But if it's as dashed lines, then you can use it later. So these are 4 points. You'll use that later at the end of the game. This is a planet. You'll use that later on the expansion board. You can use things from one board onto another board, but when you roll the dice, the symbols you roll on them can only be used on this board. So like, for example, these wormholes that I jump back and forth, I need to have gravity drive to do this. This one here lets me claim 2 explored small systems, the little small ones, each round for free. You also notice there's 3 lines here. Certain things in this game will give you extra dice, and if I decide to use it on this board, then whenever the blue die is rolled, I can use it on this board. And this is also, like I said, where you'll get these artifact cards, which are worth victory points and give you special things that you can use. On the expansion board, you can spend the planets that you got on the navigation board to open up space docks, which is one of the ways to get extra dice. You can use it the normal way by also spending resources. And you can use planets here to open up a planet. Once a planet's opened up, you can start crossing off different resources on that planet. And as you cross off rows and columns, you're going to get rewards. Now, one of the rewards that you get is population. And whenever you get population on any board, you circle up this track, which becomes more and more valuable as the game goes by. There's also different technologies here. There's all sorts of things you can get from the planets. And as I said, depending on different planets, here's Hope's End, you'll get different resources. The industry board is where you're going to get commodities. And you'll do that here by, you start with one spot scrapped on this board. But once something's scrapped, and you can scrap more spots by crossing out an X, you can claim things, but you can only claim something next to something that's scrapped. So I can't claim this, but I could scrap this, which now lets me claim these 3. And you spend different resources to scrap and claim. These give you commodities, and you're going to be taking commodities here. And once you get a whole row of commodities, you're going to get victory points as you go across. But as you get columns, you're going to get trading resources. Trading resources matter because in the deck, in each of eras 2, 3, and 4, there's going to be a card that shows up, like this one here, redefine the trade routes, and you're going to get a resource for each thing you have underlined here. So I'd get 1, 2, 3 trading goods. Trading goods are 2 for 1 point at the end of the game, but more importantly, they're wild resources. You're also going to get votes here, when different things happen, and votes are going to matter because at different times over the course of the game, there's going to be an event that causes everybody to vote. It's going to be a council event. When that happens, you're going to draw a card randomly, depending on what age it is, turn it over, and players are going to spend their votes voting for the pass thing to happen or the fail thing to happen, and whichever one gets more votes, that's what's going to happen, which might change rules of the game or make people cross things out. The 4th and final board is Warfare. Now, Warfare, you're going to be building spaceships to attack your 2 neighbors. So you'll be, anything on this side of the Warfare board hits your left neighbor. Anything here hits your right neighbor. So you have a line here at the bottom. This is the line where you're going to be starting to put it's called the deployment line. That's where you're going to deploy your different spaceships. So let's say, for example, I spend 3 of this resource. I'm going to get 1 point, and now I get a cruiser, which I could put right there like that. But I can also, after I place it like that, I could have placed a cruiser this way too. And you just fill in these lines. The number of dots on each line is going to be the strength that you have against your opponent when a war card shows up from the deck. And there's 3 wars in the game. If you cover up these things, you'll get victory points. There's certain spots here on the board, anomalies, that you cannot go in. You have huge ships, dreadnoughts, and war suns, but you need to spend one of these special resources that you'll get to be able to build them at all, although they're worth a lot of points and take up a lot of dots. So whenever there's a war phase, you'll fight both of your neighbors. This is the award for the winner, the top thing, which is one of those specialty resources. The loser gets the bottom, which is going to be a -1 victory point. You'll then draw another deployment line, and then everything in the second one will be in the second war. So there are some cards that in the 5th era will end the game. At that point, everyone's going to add up their score. You'll get some bonus points and actually votes if you're the first person when you're exploring on the planet map to get to Mechatol Rex. So that's going to give you points. Like I said, you'll also get points if you have done this. Like this says, mark all 10 nodes in 2 rows. So these bonus points. And then, of course, all the different points that you've circled over the course of the board. You add these together, and whoever has the most points is the winner of the game. Now, before we go back to our final thoughts, I do want to point out a few things that the game has. First of all, it has 2 rule books. It has a very complete rule book, which is how I learned the rules from this rule book. But there's also a play as you learn thing, which is kind of a quick way to jump into the game. The markers are what are called chalk markers. You're not going to be able to use just any old erasable marker on this game. And so just keep that in mind. I found them a little bit kind of a pain to erase. They erase, but it does take some work as you take these things out. You're definitely going to want to erase everything immediately after a game, or it's going to stay on the board. But the orange does stick out, although I could see myself maybe getting yellow or white markers too. But again, you're looking for chalk markers. All right, I just in the mail got some chalk markers.
Oh, good.
Because you had mentioned, I didn't know this was a thing until Mike mentioned. So I got some white ones, and I want to test them on this game. I like the production of this game, actually, in many ways. I think the cards are good quality.
Nice.
I like the things. I don't know why. I love the color orange, as evidenced by bright orange that I wear.
Sure.
I don't like these orange markers because they get all over my fingers and it looks like Cheeto dust.
That was one of the things
Oh my
from like my
gosh.
plays is that you just end up with orange hands.
Yeah. Yeah, because they say like, oh, you can wipe it down with like a slightly moist thing at the, like a moist napkin at the end, and it was.
And I think white would work on these. I mean, I'm going to have to test it out and see.
There's threads on Board Game Geek about different types of pens you can get, because inevitably, no matter how good these pens are, and I think they're pretty good.
They are good, yeah.
They will wear out.
They will.
And so, yeah.
I think you're definitely going to need, like, at the end of the game, you shouldn't use the eraser on the back of the thing.
No.
You're going to need a thing to wipe the whole thing down.
They say
I
do
agree.
that in the
So-
They do specifically tell you to use, a little bit of a wipe.
Because that little eraser on the tip of it was just
You're going to you're going to ruin it if you try
to.
to erase the whole board. So.
Yeah, so that just, you know that going in. Like I said, I think the rest of the components are fine. One thing I thought I was pretty happy with was the symbology in the game.
Yes.
I didn't find it to be particularly onerous. There was a little bit of a, sometimes you circle something and go, when you're in your first game, where is this again?
Right.
Oh, it's population, it's over here.
It's over, yeah.
But they give you a reference card.
Yep.
And the only thing I got caught up on, and maybe this isn't so much of a deal for you, is that there's 3 resources in the game. On the boards, those resources are colors. On the dice, they're not. They're just symbols.
The green, pink, and blue dice are those things.
Right.
The black dice show the
everything.
different symbols.
Right.
And sometimes that would throw me off.
The triangle one is fine, but it's the other two.
Yeah, that's not a huge, and the dice are great.
Yeah.
The cards are also really clear. You flip a card over, it tells you exactly what to do.
Yes.
Right.
I love that. They're like, draw the line. Got it.
Right.
On the war cards. And then there's that whole learn how to play. So, we played a lot of roll and writes.
Yes.
All of us. The most complicated roll and write I played, I think. Well, you have not played a lot.
I've played some. It's not my favorite genre overall. I'm just going
Sure.
to preface with that.
But what's it called? The most complicated is
Probably Hadrian's Wall.
Hadrian's Wall, for
Or
sure.
Roman roll.
Roman roll is not as much complicated as it just feels like it could have been a board game.
Yeah.
Got it, yeah.
Right. Yeah. As far as roll and write.
This looks like the most complicated roll and write you'll ever play.
Right.
But it is not as complex as Hadrian's Wall, and in fact, I think you'll get it after your first play. I mean, when I went in the second time, I was like, got it.
Go ahead. Sorry.
The Learn to Play guide is really good. I went in knowing nothing. I just went through that to kind of test it out, and I thought that was a really effective way of teaching it. I then erased it and just started a new game, but I thought that was a useful tool. It taught you enough and then said, now read these pages about a few extra symbols we haven't covered.
Well, I'm glad that that's the case because now we have both experiences at the table. I completely ignored the Learn to Play.
I also ignored the
learned
Learn
it
to
directly
Play.
from the rule book, and I agree with you. I think the game is nowhere near as complex as it looks on the table. It looks overwhelming. It is not terribly complex, and I think the reason why, it's complex as far as roll and writes go, but it's not terribly complex as far as hobby board games. I don't think it's a medium weight game, I would say. And I think the reason for that is having an active sheet. That to me is the thing that makes this game work. I think if you did not choose an active sheet every round, it would be overwhelming.
But to that end, I have noticed in every game of this, I think there's 4 sheets, and the Explore sheet, where you go do planets, is considerably easier to figure out than the others.
For sure.
And every time I've taught this, that is the first sheet people do. Well, also you need to do that sheet to do the planet one.
Right.
But it's people are like, I understand this. Go out and explore. And then, okay, here, cross off rows and columns. The manufacturing board, or whatever it's called, the one with the
Industry.
Flipping back and forth in
production.
between scrapping.
That one's a little trickier. I thought that one was the most complex, and then the war one's also a little complex because you can't. There's like more rules to follow on that one. You can't go this way. Your ships can't go on top of these dots.
Right.
And also, how does a war work again? So I want to, before we jump into wars, and I do want to talk about wars, I want to talk about, is this Twilight Imperium ruling right?
I mean,
Everyone looks at Roy.
I mean, I love Twilight Imperium. I love 4X games, and I feel, and me and Mike have talked about this a little bit, is if you like Twilight Imperium, that might actually detract from your enjoyment of this game if you're taking the baggage from Twilight Imperium into this. This is a big, heavy roll and write. It's heavier for roll and write standards or whatever.
For sure.
Lots of rolling dice, but it doesn't feel 4X to me, really. It doesn't feel like you're expanding your empire the same. It feels like you're checking off boxes and circling things. But as far as them taking Twilight Imperium and turning it into a roll and write, which I don't know if that's a thing that should be done, but it has been done. They did a good job of kind of trying to do that, but there's some things that kind of, I feel like they definitely missed the mark on as far as like making it feel 4X-ish. I don't know.
I also feel like there's a lot of baggage that I carried over from Twilight Imperium. People think I'm the dry Eurogame player. I've also played Twilight Imperium a few times. I really enjoy the game and respect it. And I thought that this was weird that knowing the symbology from Twilight Imperium almost made it harder to figure this out.
Right.
Because I was like, what does this do? Oh, this is this important thing from Twilight Imperium. Oh, if I have 2 of them, it's 1 point at the end of the game.
Right.
There were odd things that I thought were actual trip-ups. I see where they made the connection. Technology, you invest in those and you get those and everything. I see some of the good ones, but also there were enough that there were kind of hiccups for me.
Whereas I'm in between. I didn't have as much of a background as any of you, but I do, we have talked about this. I think that this is much more for fans of heavy roll and writes than it is for fans of TI.
Right.
I do think that it's going to make some people that really like TI are going to bounce off of this very hard because they have this baggage going in.
I don't disagree with that, but I do disagree with much of what you guys said. I think the theme works.
I agree.
I was really happy when there's so many different aliens, and I saw the alien, I was like, yes, that is what I would have done to make them work on roll and write. I thought drawing the ships, I thought that worked, and I think it does have a 4-hex feel, actually. The Explore board, you're finding new planets.
Let me circle
I understand that.
Let me cross off this.
I understand that, but you could say that about anything. You could also be like, War Sun, roll 3 dice instead of 1.
Right.
I mean, is...
The Warfare board is my favorite board.
It's not my favorite board, but I get it.
I really like that aspect.
Every time I explained the Warfare board, I said, like 7 Wonders, and everyone's like, got it.
Yeah, just your neighbors.
Just have the neighbors, and you can definitely...
How thematic is the Warfare in 7 Wonders?
But you can ignore...
Right.
Yeah, but it's a roll and write.
Right.
Again, remember, a lot of what I'm saying comes in because I came in this expecting the worst. And so my opinions were better realized in that regard. But I kind of liked it. I do want to say, I like the game. There's one thing I found to be very underwhelming in it, and it's my favorite part of Twilight Imperium.
Yes.
The agendas.
I agree.
The voting.
Yeah.
I have no idea who made the voting cards.
They're so watered down.
They really, I'm saving votes. And then the voting came up, and I was like, almost every time I go, I don't care which one wins.
That's the same thing that happened to me. Every single time, I was like, I'm going to save up my votes. I'm going to do some things to make it so I can have votes, because agendas in Twilight Imperium, the game, are really important. And they could be like you could win or lose based on how a game agenda happens. And in here, it's like, this kind of good thing happens, this kind of good thing happens. I guess that one's technically better for me, but why am I going to waste votes on this? So I kept waiting till a good agenda popped up, and it never happened.
And then votes don't count for anything at the end of the game, really.
Right.
They're just there. That is I thought, by far the weakest part of this game. I mean, you can laugh about warfare being abstracted, but at least it meant something. Right. You win a war, your opponent gets -1 point, which isn't a big deal, but you get like a cool thing.
Good,
you get a kind of cool thing, and they're more valuable the later the wars. That part's not bad.
But the first agenda, I was like, I don't care. I'll save my votes for the second one.
It seems strange because that's a very thematic thing that they pulled from Twilight Imperium, and to have it so inconsequential in the actual game.
Maybe in playtesting they found that people don't like playing a 2-hour game and then having a card.
I think that may be part of it. I think that is, I agree, it's the most underwhelming part of the game, but I do feel like it was an attempt to try to have a little more interactivity in a roll and write game.
Yeah, but I just wish it was like whoever votes yes, then you get 3 points.
Yeah.
Just something, but usually it was like both things are bad. I was like, oh, okay, I'll pick the least worst for me, and it's usually the least worst for everybody.
They're very situational at best.
That being said, I want to be clear. That's actually the only thing I disliked. I like the deck. It tells you where you are in the game.
Yep.
I went into this expecting it to be this long affair. I was engaged the whole time.
I agree.
You turn over a card, you do it. Sure, there could be one person who's a little slower writing things down.
But that's any game, yeah.
I think you could, as a solo game, did you play solo?
I played a solo, yeah.
You could just go,
yeah. You can get through a pretty quick solo.
Yeah,
my first time playing a solo, with the learn to play rules, wiping the board, then starting over again, maybe over 2 hours.
First game. Yeah, I'm trying to remember. I've gotten solo games down to close to an hour now.
Yeah, you could go through it very quick because you're not waiting. This is one of those things. I'm going to make a Chris's law. Simultaneous games are only semi-simultaneous, right? In that everyone does something at the same time. The more people you play with, the more chance there is that one person at the table will lock up this turn. In the next round, someone else is going to lock up.
Yeah.
So it's simultaneous, but the more I would not play this with 8 people.
Is that what it says? It goes up to 8?
There's 8 boards in there,
no. 4 max.
This is one of those.
Straight up. Also, you can't see everything.
Also, the table's too huge,
This is one of those carryover things, right? Like, the original Twilight Imperium, people play it 6 to 8 people. Yeah. So this one has to be. No,
I feel like this one would probably pay better at 3 because then you're actually affecting the people you're playing the game with. Yeah. Because wars on this side, wars on that side. If you're playing 4 or more, then the person across the table from you, you're not really affecting, except in the agenda, which we said is super like watered down.
So you don't care that they're there. Yeah. They're just slowing down the game.
Okay, but I didn't mind it at 4 actually, and I played it with 4 twice, and I was happy with that. I was like, oh, yes, there was always. I was like, man, if that person wasn't playing, this game would be 20 minutes faster. But I didn't think it was that bad.
Right.
I would not play with anybody though who had strong analysis paralysis because first of all, they're like, which board? I'm like, oh my word! I already know what board before the cards flipped over.
I usually
I'm
do
like,
too.
I'm ready to go.
I need to. Too.
And what do you all think about the rules? Say, hey, you don't have to do all 4 boards. You can just concentrate on 1 or 2. What do you think about that?
The fact that that's a possibility, or that they put it in the rule book? Like,
no. How do you feel like it? Can you just pick a board or 2 to concentrate on?
I don't think a board, but I think probably you're going to naturally focus on a couple of boards.
Right.
I think that's what's going to happen. You're going to and you're going to probably focus on the boards that synergize well with each other, because some boards synergize well. Obviously, the planetary board is going to synergize with the exploration board and things along those lines.
In fact, I think that's actually the strongest synergy. You can't really go to the planet board on your first turn.
Right.
I mean, you can,
but you're not going to want to.
Right. Yeah. So I almost wish there was a way around that.
Well, I think some of the player powers maybe give you a little bit of an option to go into one of those boards.
Got it.
And that's the other thing is I really, really like those player powers. I think they did a very good job with those.
Yeah, like if you get your own ship that no one else has, that just feels fun.
Prototype War Sun, baby.
That's probably the strongest part of the game.
Right.
Yeah.
That's a good carryover, right? Twilight Imperium known for asymmetric player powers. Let's port those over, make them feel like the Universities of Jolnar.
And the cool thing is that they brought over all of the aliens, like from the expansion, from everything. They have tons of aliens in this, and that's one of the things I love in games, especially Twilight Imperium, is all those different powers.
All right, Roy, what'd you think?
Okay, so for me, I want to preface with saying I'm not a fan of roll and write games, really. I've played several. I do feel like there's a lot of missed opportunity here as far as like, I like when a roll and write has combos and you can like bounce things off from this and that. There's a little bit of that, but the fact that you're stuck on one board like makes it hard for me to like feel like I'm doing exciting things on a turn. I'm just like circling and checking. I love Twilight Imperium. I love 4X. This doesn't feel 4X to me, and it feels very pasted on Twilight Imperium to me. I don't get the theme through. I love the icons. I love the art. I love the alien powers, but this is not a game I'm going to come back to. I'm giving it a 5 overall. I'm just not a fan of roll and writes in general, like circling and crossing off things, and seeing one of my favorite games like this kind of is slightly disappointing in my opinion.
Well, actually, I did want to hear that. I wanted to hear that because there's people in that same boat. What about you?
Sure.
My score is going to be a 6. I found it fun. I'm trying to parse this into 3 different kind of thoughts, right? As a roll and write game, as a Twilight Imperium game, and as both of those things mixed together. As a roll and write game, it's fine. There's a lot of good decisions with it. I like the fact that there's a variable pair of powers. I like that there's thematically different things going on, but you cross things off and circle other things.
Right.
And then you cross other things off and then you circle other things. It's a competent roll and write game. As a Twilight Imperium game, I'm with you. It's actually quite disappointing. And so merging those 2 things together, there's a lot of missed opportunity, I think, especially with Warfare. It feels, I disagree. It feels so abstract to the point where I don't care. I build a War Sun. Why? Because it's 4 points.
Right.
That's not what I want to feel like in a Twilight Imperium, in a 4X type of a game. It's a roll and write, I think, first and foremost. And that, a long one, okay. I would play it again, but 6 for me.
I'm going to jump up a bit here. I'm giving it an 8. I really like it. And if it wasn't for that, I feel like voting should be more powerful. I think I would give it a 9 if it wasn't for that. But that voting is actually, that weakens that one section that really bothers me. But again, this is coming into it from a negative opinion, but I didn't expect it to have tons of Twilight Imperium. So the stuff I found, I was like, oh, cool. Flip over the board. Hope's End. Yeah. And yes, I know they're just shout-outs and stuff, but you know what? I like the roll and write because I feel like it gives me lots of options. A lot of roll and writes give you this small sheet of paper. You're like, oh, you cleverly did this. In this one, I was like, oh, I can work on this board for a while, and this gave me, I can use this over here. And getting the extra dice, I enjoyed that a lot.
You have to do that.
The text, I do wish that the flip sides of the board had different text on them, like again, this stuff might come in an expansion.
Right.
They better make expansion against better voting cards, agenda cards. But
I agree.
But other than that, man, I'm so fascinated. I'm not, the only time is the brief 30 seconds where I'm like, are you done yet? I want to draw the next card. I don't know. I guess maybe my expectations were just different, and I think that's reasonable, but I went into this thinking, and left it going, I like the Twilight Imperium theme, but as roll and writes go, I loved Hadrian's Wall, for example, but I didn't know what I was doing the whole time.
Yeah.
This one, I do know what I'm doing, and so that helps me out. I like it better than Hadrian's Wall. So.
Okay, I don't, but it's not my new.
You don't.
I don't like it better than
Hadrian's Wall.
It's not my new favorite roll and write, but it's up there. It's in the top tier. I'm also at an 8, and I'm pushing back a little bit about what you're saying. You're just crossing things off and circling things. Well, that's a roll and write. That's like talking about.
Well, sure, but I mean,
that's like talking about a Euro game and saying, "Oh, you're just gathering resources and converting them." Yeah, that's a Euro game, right? This is a roll and write.
What's next?
You can't suddenly take a roll and write and expect it to not be in roll and write. I don't think it feels like a bog standard roll and write. I think that for a game of this genre, it is more interactive than most. It's still not an incredibly interactive game, but it's also not multiplayer solitaire. I think that they made a lot of smart design decisions. I like the active board. I do like the Warfare a lot. Abstracted or not, I really do enjoy that aspect of the game a lot. I also do agree that the weakest aspect is the voting, and it would be really nice if they made that more impactful, something that you really had to account for more. That would raise the score if they had handled that a bit better. But this is one that I will continue to come back to. I love the different powers, and I don't have the expectations that you guys did, which are perfectly valid for you to have.
And I actually wanted people to be able to see that because I think it's important because people are coming in this from all different directions.
Right, and I'm someone who played it once, and so I had that one background for it, and so I was able to see where they tried to make those connections, but I didn't feel disappointed that it wasn't Twilight Imperium in this box.
This might be one where for almost everybody, it's definitely going to be a try it first to see if you like it.
Right.
You don't think that Hadrian's Wall supersedes the check boxes or circle things feel of a roll and write game?
No, I mean, I think it is. I like it more than this, so I think it does distinguish itself a bit more.
I think it distinguishes itself more.
Yeah,
This says the epic roll and write, and I think that one's the epic one. This one feels more roll and write.
Yeah, again, if we're comparing the two, I do still prefer Hadrian's Wall, but I think this is in the upper echelon of roll and write games.
Well, there you go, folks. That's Twilight Inscription. Check it out. Until next time, I'm Tom Vasel.
I'm Chris Yee.
I'm Roy Cannaday.
I'm Mike Dilisio.
And let's go conquer Mechatol Rex.
Or don't.